There's an awesome new free resource. I didn't build it, but I want you to know about it. That helps you find unique airstrips to go visit. Now, traditionally, I feel like we might just look around ForeFlight or, kind of the sectional charts and look for unpaved airstrips, try to find out some things about them, ask around locally, look in forums, all that stuff. But this new tool makes finding unique airstrips way easier, and so I want to demo it for you. So the tool is called Airfield.Guide, and so if we go over here to any web browser, it is Airfield.Guide. Now, I want to welcome some of you into the year 2022 lovingly and inform you that not all websites end in .com. So don't go to airfieldguide.com. That's not going to get you there. It's airfield.guide. .guide is the same thing that the .com is accomplishing here. So we go to airfield.guide. And I want to walk you through some of the awesome resources here. Of course, my internet goes slow as soon as I hit record. All right, let's fast forward to when it loads. All right, so here we are in Airfield.Guide. This is a growing library of airstrips that have been manually documented by the team at Airfield.Guide. And it's a free resource to help you understand some strips worth exploring. So it's not every airport in America. It's just some of the really unique ones and off-airport type operations. And so the first thing you'll notice here is there's a bunch of dots and green dots and yellow dots with numbers. I'll explain what the numbers mean here in a second. But the green, as you'll see in the legend down here, are kind of public airstrips, and then the yellow ones, it says conditional here. So it'll tell you on the listing, maybe you need to call the landowner first, that sort of thing. And so this is growing all of the time. I think the guys are based in Arkansas, so they've done a really good job documenting a lot of Arkansas strips, but there are others. So let me just show you a couple listings here and show you all the cool things it can do. I like the map mode. I think it's a little cleaner and easier to see. So as soon as you zoom in, let's go find one of my favorite airstrips in northwestern Arkansas. I happen to know where this is. It's Trigger Gap. But obviously, as you can see here, it's easy to go kind of explore and say, oh, what is this one? What is this one? But let me find Trigger Gap here and show you what is going on. So here we are on Trigger Gap. Now, I'm going to go through these different tabs, and the information gets more and more powerful the farther we go left to right. So general overview information can be helpful and have your contacts and stuff on there. That's not normally hard to find. The map information, I think it's neat that they add some information here that you won't necessarily find on a sectional or within ForeFlight or whatnot. Things like some of these amenities, they will have some notes on here. So for example, and I know based off of experience, but if I hadn't gone here before, it's helpful to know that, okay, Trigger Gap has access to good canoeing. In fact, here's the Kings River and Trigger Gap outfitters with their numbers, and hey, they'll come pick you up and take you to canoe and fish the river. There's a new composting toilet. It's just information that's helpful. It's kind of, you get the insider look about this airstrip. So that can be helpful, a lot of information on the map. Runways here, they have charted this, and I love how they have put this on kind of the Google satellite imagery, and this is going to get more powerful here in a second. So they've put the runway on there, but then for a lot of these strips, they have gone in and actually filmed themselves flying and landing on those strips both directions. So here's runway 10, here's runway 10, runway 10, runway 10, and then runway 28. And so they're just short. They don't have a lot of fluff in it. It's not like, hey, here's our entire trip, and here's what the hot dogs looked like after we cooked them on the fire. It's just 90 seconds of here is the landing, here's what you need to know, which I think is helpful. They link some of that in there. And then if there's other photos or videos associated with it, actually, this is one of my videos. This was not planned, but thanks guys for embedding that in there. They'll have that on the strip just as an additional resource. I had put together a video talking about how northwestern Arkansas is just kind of an underrated spot that not enough people are talking about. So I guess they put that video in there because I filmed Trigger Gap a little bit. Nearest weather, this is pretty straightforward. What starts to get more powerful here, like I said, as we move left to right through these tabs, is first of all, this relative hazard index. So the relative hazard index is just really, really helpful. I love this tool. They've got some notes here about how they compiled it, how they calculated and things. But for every single strip that is in Airfield.Guide, they have gone through and marked these different categories. So everything from, it's basically the risk factor of the particular airport. So airport environment, kind of what's the airport elevation? Are you going to have really big density altitude? You can click on any of these and it'll tell you, what got the different number of points. The higher the points, the higher the relative hazard index. The proximity to mountains, runway length, here you can see how you got, 0 to 5 points. And so for this one, there's only 4 points in the relative hazard index. for runway 10, for runway 10, but they do it by runway because, you know, the nature of the approach or the runway itself or the hazards could be different, you know, depending on which direction you were landing. And so they split that out based off of the runway. So the trigger gap RHI is 6. And so you'll notice that that corresponds with all of these numbers when you're looking across the different listings. So I said I'd come back and tell you what the numbers are. That's what these numbers are. And so you can see in this area, okay, here's a 6. 6 is pretty low, pretty straightforward. There's a 4. Here's an 18 down here. So we could kind of go look into what makes up the hazards of that strip. So I love the relative hazard index. It's really interesting just to kind of go through and see the definitions and see, okay, is this runway a little bit more risky than another one, and for what reasons? You can go into briefing if the airstrip has it, and not all of them have it, but some of them might have specific documents that someone has typed up a briefing for that airstrip. Just some of the different things you need to know about the approaches, about the runway condition, all that sort of thing. So they link it all right here, nice and easily accessible. On the profiles page, this is where things start to get a little bit more powerful. So you can put in your own performance of your aircraft here, the approach speed, both for the approach and landing and the departure. You can put in your speeds, your climb and descent rate, and your landing distances, and it's going to spit out the profile of how much runway you're going to eat up, what it's going to look like to clear a 50-foot obstacle if there is one, etc. But the really exciting thing that is what you can do with this data is the ability to download our profile here, our approach profile and our departure profile based on the specific performance of our aircraft, and download it and view it in Google Earth. So Google Earth is free. You can download it to your computer, and then you can download the profile that you've loaded here. Let me show you what this looks like, because it's a way to go actually kind of simulate your approach before you actually do it. So here is trigger gap loaded up, and you'll notice that it's got all of these kind of 3D profiles. These are the approach and departure profiles that we had loaded in here. The yellow is the approach, the blue is the departure. But what I really, really love about this is you can zoom in, and since it's kind of 3D in nature, you can sort of simulate what the approach is going to be like. So as you're flying here left to right, you would be on a left downwind, and then you can kind of come over here and turn the camera, so to speak, to see what it's going to look like when we're on final for runway 28. And you can click on anything, it's going to label what it is. So these are trees and shrubs that are the 50-foot obstacle at the start of the runway. You can see down here in blue, it actually highlights it over here, that these are the tie-down areas. So this is where we're going to park once we get there. The green, okay, that's camping areas. So I know, okay, I'm not going to park down here. I'm going to, maybe if I land short, I can carry momentum down to the end of the runway, because that's where we're going to be parking. And then you can see where the windsock locations are going to be, these little orange cylinders here. And then you can kind of tell, based on the topography here, you can see how it comes out to it's kind of a plateau. And so as you're departing it, okay, the elevation is going to really drop off at the end. And then conversely, if we were actually landing to the east and landing on runway 10, then we know to kind of expect that. And I think this perspective is just something you're just not going to get from just looking at straight up Google Maps. And so you can kind of fly this. But this is fairly flat topography. But where it really even comes in more handy is if you go into somewhere like the mountains, like Johnson Creek up in Idaho, and you can start to get a much stronger appreciation for what that is going to feel like. So kind of looking at the approach profiles and what the departure is going to feel like. And if you really, really zoom in here and kind of pretend that you're flying in the valley and then kind of tilt the camera up, you're going to be a little bit less surprised by, okay, we're going to be flying up the right side of this alley, and valley, and then we're going to be below the tops of the mountains, and here's kind of our turnaround point to make our base the final turn. You can just start to simulate all of that. And I'm so excited to go back up to Idaho and just go ahead and fly all of these approaches in Google Earth, so I have a better appreciation for it. Nothing can substitute for the real thing, but I think this is so helpful. And so Airfield.Guide, not Airfield.Guide.com. Make sure you get that right. And I would love to hear from you in the comments. What are some of the favorite strips that you find in this platform? What's kind of the list of places that you want to go visit? And I'll make sure to go check them out too. There's a lot of really cool places to discover using this tool.